I want to talk about one of the most common challenges that I see with leaders. They know what they need to be doing, but they are still struggling to delegate, to set boundaries, and it means that they are getting drawn into the tactical parts of their work. And that means they're working late because they're trying to stay on to get the strategic work done. So interestingly, it's the habits that have actually resulted in their success. It's the habits that have got them promoted, and they're caught up in them, unable to let them go. And that is what is making them inefficient and ineffective in the leadership position they are now in. This sounds familiar to you. Stay watching. I'm going to cover through what it is, why it is, and how you can move on from it. I'm Zoe Thompson, and I help leaders to be more efficient, more effective, so that they can create and build teams that are self-sufficient and confident, so that they can go home on time and take a week off knowing that everything is going to run smoothly in their absence. If you've been watching this series, you'll know that these are blogs that I write every week and then film them as video content for those of you who prefer to digest the information this way. So this is something that comes up a lot in leadership coaching sessions, and people raise it in workshops as well. They know what they need to do. They know they need to be delegating more. They know that they need to set clearer boundaries. And they also know they need to stop solving every problem themselves and protect time for strategic work. And they are committed to doing these things. I know that they recognize that it is important for them to do these things, yet they find it very difficult to break that cycle of behavior, to break that habit. So they're still working late, they're still saying yes to everything, and they're still the go-to for every problem. One of my clients just illustrates this so well. We talked about this in sessions. It kept coming up. They kept talking about what it is they wanted to do, what they wanted to change. They recognized that actually them being the go-to person wasn't just a disadvantage for them as an individual. It was a disadvantage for the team as well, because the team were getting more and more reliant on them. The team needed for them to be available and accessible. And those constant interruptions meant that they weren't getting the work done that they knew they needed to do. And they acknowledged that they needed to step away. They needed to help put that distance in place to create a different change in their own habits and behaviors that would then create a change in the habits and behaviors of those in their team. And they acknowledged that actually, if they were in the office, working on the strategic task, working on the business development, that would benefit everybody. It wouldn't just benefit them, it would benefit the business, and therefore it would benefit the people in the business. So they recognize that the managing, the coordinating, and the leading, in terms of a return on the investment of their time and their energy, far more valuable than personally answering customer calls or being available and accessible to every staff member they had. So we kept talking about this. It kept coming up in different ways, and they were so determined to make this happen, but they were struggling to make it sustainable. So they were making progress, they were making some good changes, and they weren't able to make it consistent or sustainable over a long period of time. And that was because this wasn't a knowledge problem. They knew what needed to change. They knew what good would look like. The challenge was they were stuck in this old identity of the identity that had made them successful. So for those of you who are business owners and have built a bigger business, and therefore your leadership is as a business owner, you'll know that when we first start out in the business, we are all of the people all of the time. And then as the business grows, we're able to either bring people in or we outsource to people who can do that work for us. In the same way, people who have been promoted from the technical work, so they're really good at their role, go into a team leader role, and even at that level, still quite tactical, still accessible, still available. You are the subject matter expert. You know the business inside out. You know the answers. The answers are easy. You are very good at being hands-on, being a problem solver, and that is what has helped you to be successful. You wouldn't be in the position that you are in now if you didn't do all of those things. So the habits and behaviours, and therefore that identity that earned your promotion, built your business to the level that it's at, has been very successful for you up until this point. And now at this point, and the point of leadership that you are in now, it's creating inefficiency. You've got the capability to lead at the level. It's just that your identity hasn't caught up yet. We need to shred those old ways of doing things, even though at one point they were successful for us. They helped us to be successful. And until that shifts, we just keep working harder, we do more hours, we sacrifice the evenings to do the strategic work, we end up logging on a Saturday morning to catch up or on a Sunday evening to try and get ahead. And then we start to question whether or not we actually are able to work at this strategic level because we're getting pulled down into the tactics and the doing. Ultimately, what it comes down to is that we and our brain recognizes that these habits, these behaviors are successful. It creates results. It gets us where we want to get to. So letting that go is really hard to do. You earned your promotion by being the best at that team. You've built your business by being really good at what you do. And this pattern happens everywhere. It happens across all industries. It happens globally. Organizations promote people who are great at their job. They're the subject matter experts, the senior members of the team, those that have been here the longest, those that are really good at what they do. So they've got great skill sets, fantastic behaviors. It's totally different to the skill set for leadership. So you probably were the person who stayed late to finish the work. You were the one that said yes when everyone else was at capacity. You were the one that solved the problems nobody else could solve, and you delivered results. You worked harder than everyone around you, and that's what led to your promotion. That's what led to your business growing to the point of where it is. The problem is that those exact habits are now keeping you overwhelmed at this higher level. So this is the trap. You're still saying yes to everything because your brain has registered that that is what got you noticed. Being available, being accessible, that's what good looks like. If you've got 10 direct reports and they are all coming to you because you are the person that fixes and solves and you say yes to everything, you become the bottleneck in your team because everything's coming through you. Every problem is landing on your desk. So your days are filled with everybody else's priorities. Your work, the things that you need to do, the things that you are contracted to do, what you are responsible and accountable for, is sitting on your desk all day. And the first opportunity that you get to do it is after everybody else goes home. So you're still working harder than your team because effectiveness equals worth in your mind, because that's how it's always been. One of my clients had 80% of their life consumed by work. That work was taking over, and they couldn't set the boundaries, or even if they set the boundaries, they were unable to hold them because their sense of value was closely linked to their work and their success of their work. So being in every decision, being involved in everything felt necessary. Working late felt more like dedication, like I'm a hard worker, rather than an indication that something wasn't working somewhere. So if you're still being hands-on when you should be strategic, this is an indication that you are stuck in this promotion trap. One of my clients described it perfectly. They just kept getting pulled down to the dance floor when they needed the balcony view. Strategic work is being on the balcony, looking ahead, looking at what is coming on the horizon and being able to work at that level where you make things easier for the rest of your team rather than being on the dance floor doing the tactical work. And for a lot of us, we've probably really enjoyed the work that we've done in the past. That's our comfort zone. It's familiar. We know how to do it. It's nice and easy. And it's easier for us to just step in and do it rather than teaching somebody else or empowering somebody else to do it for themselves. And this is where we talk about still solving every problem yourself, because in your mind, it's faster than teaching someone else. You've become the best problem solver on your team. You've got a reputation for being the best problem solver on your team, rather than creating a new reputation as a leader who develops problem solvers. So your team is still coming to you first. And then there's a risk that operations stop when you're not there, because you've trained, albeit not consciously, you've accidentally trained them to need you. And this is where people get trapped. You are the doer. You are someone who likes to get things done. You've got a reputation for getting things done. And then what happens is you get caught in everything. You get invited to every meeting, because why wouldn't they want you in there? Because they can allocate actions to you, because you're not saying no. And you like to be helpful. You like to be supportive, and you know all of the information. You get caught in that cycle of back-to-back meetings. You are dealing with relentless problems that are coming in, and you're in this constant reactive mode. Now, you want to think more like a senior leader, but it's this busyness trap that keeps pulling you back into that reactive mode. And so your leadership skills are there, because your identity is stuck at that more tactical level. It's not just costing you in terms of your time and your energy. It's creating a pattern that becomes your new normal, but also the culture and the habits and the behaviours of your team. One of the things that comes up quite a lot is that people talk about working harder because they need to prove themselves. They need to prove to their team and also to their seniors that they deserve the role, especially when we're newly promoted. And I certainly remember those days myself. You want to prove yourself. You just need the first couple of months to get everything sorted out, to learn everything that you need to do. And so it needs longer hours. Ultimately, what we risk doing here is that we end up in 12 months, 18 months time, still being in this same pattern, because as we create this pattern, we're also creating this pattern for the individuals that we lead. What we end up doing is picking up everybody else's work because we've taught everybody to come to us. Maybe we've even told people to come to us. So either through the words that we use or the actions that we take, we are training our team to come through us, or that we are the go-to person because we're so helpful and we can give them immediate answers that are going to help them. It's also going to connect to your core values as a leader. Now, I work with a lot of leaders who are impact driven. They're not necessarily driven by income and by big money. They're impact led people. So they want to be supportive. They want to make a difference. This is part of their core values. They want to be the person that people can count on. They pride themselves in being the go-to person, and they pride themselves in being helpful and supportive. That's what good looks like. Now, the challenge is not to remove those values, because ultimately they are our core values, so very hard to change. What we want to do is look at what that looks like at a more senior level. So if you are now working at this level, what does supportive look like? What does making a difference look like? How does being the person that people can count on look like when you're at a more senior level? So if a tactical leadership level, supportive means helping them out, giving them the answers, solving the problem yourself, then we need to look at what that looks like at a more senior level. And it might mean that you develop their capability to be able to solve it themselves, that you upskill them, that you delegate and empower and train them to be able to do this themselves. Help them with the decision making, help them with the skills and the tools that they need to be able to take the action themselves. We don't want to redefine what your core values are. We want to redefine what your core values look like working at a more senior level, and one that is sustainable. When people are trapped between this doer identity and this need or want and desire to lead at a more strategic level, they get stuck in between these two identities. They know that they earned that promotion. They know deep down, they know that they have every right to be there, but they're stuck in like an old operating model of how to do things, and it's just not working at this new level. Then they start to question, am I right to be here? Have I been promoted too early? Is somebody going to find out that I shouldn't be in this position? We start to question our capability rather than recognizing that actually it's because we're trying to live in two different worlds and lead in two different ways. I have a lot of conversations around how we tie our worth to our identity, how we tie our worth to our leadership, and also how we tie our own worth to our output, not our team's output. So if you enjoy that faster paced environment, if you enjoy the challenges, then we need to recognize what sustainable looks like and what high performance looks like at this more strategic level. And ultimately, at a higher and more senior level, our teams need us to be calm. They need us to be forward thinking. They need us to be thinking ahead and removing anything that is likely to create chaos rather than responding to chaos. When we tie our worth to being needed and being the person that has all the answers and being the person that's really helpful, really supportive and always accessible and available, we can't take a full week off. The guilt would consume us. It would completely undermine what we see good looks like. And that fear that everything that would fall apart if we don't check in, if we're not available to our teams, even via email, would just keep pulling us back into our work, even when we're on holiday. So our team's dependency on us is actually our dependency on being needed. When we don't evolve that identity, it isn't just our evenings and weekends that are impacted. It's our time away as well. But it's also our effectiveness, our efficiency, our energy, and our confidence as a leader. Becoming a different kind of leader is the shift. We want to work more effectively and more efficiently. We want to move away from I'm valuable because I'm the best person to take action, I'm the action taker, to I'm valuable because I help others to take action. I'm valuable because I am capable in getting things done versus I'm valuable because I develop capability in others. This is something that we work through on the Elevate Your Efficiency program. We have 8 weeks working together where we look at where your inefficiencies are. We look at where you can be more effective through your habits, through your behaviors, through evolving into this next identity. So if you're trapped in back-to-back meetings, you are constantly dealing with the priorities of other people and you're in that reactive mode, we look at what you want your intentional leadership to look like and how do we move you by changing your habits, changing your behaviors, changing how you show up and lead. And this is something that comes up time and time again when we run the program. Participants get their time back. My goal is to get them at least 1 hour a day back, 5 hours a week. So they can either go home on time or they can focus on the strategic tasks that they're not often getting time to do. So at the end of the program, participants share how much time they're getting back because they're in fewer meetings, because they are more conscious and deliberate about their time. They are more intentional. They are no longer reactive. They are intentional and purposeful about where they're spending their time. They're also starting to share the habits and behaviors that they are adopting with their team. So whilst they become more efficient and effective, their team become more efficient and effective. Rather than answering every question, they are starting to empower and enable their teams to be a team of problem solvers. So the team adapts because the leader's identity changes first. So let's go back to the examples that I used earlier, the leader that's got 10 people within their team and they're a bottleneck. So this was a participant of the program. They were completely consumed during the day by constant interruptions and demands from their team. They were exhausted. And they were questioning whether or not they were ready to be working at this level. They were sacrificing family time because they were trying to keep on top of things. They were determined to make it all work. But their team were just becoming more and more demanding. By the end of the program, they were cutting and reducing all of this time down. And their team were becoming more capable and more confident. They weren't bringing everything through them. So that bottleneck then disappeared. So their efficiency increased, their level of effectiveness increased. And that leader putting those boundaries in place and protecting them and then being able to work on their strategic tasks meant that life and work actually got easier for their team as well. Also going home on time. They didn't have to log on at weekends. And this changed in 8 weeks, not because we put time management tactics in place, but because we looked at how they wanted to lead, how they could be more intentional, how they could be more effective. We transformed their identity as a leader. So if this sounds familiar to you, here are a couple of pointers to how to actually make this leadership identity shift. And this is whether or not you are in your first role as a leader or whether or not you are stepping up in your leadership level. Once you've identified what good looks like, what good intentional leadership looks like at the level that you are now at, you need to recognize the pattern of your old habits and behaviors from your previous role. Where are you noticing old habits and behaviors that worked really well in the job that you were in before that are now holding you back and blocking your success in the role that you are now in? Look at those habits and behaviors and look to see where it is attached to that old identity. We are not that person anymore. We are evolving as we grow, and we need to leave some of these old habits and behaviors behind. Now, if we can identify what the belief is, then we can start to challenge it. So if, as with one of my clients, if the belief is that working past 5 o'clock, now when everybody else has gone home, is dedication, and that means that you're valuable and that you contribute and that you are significant, then that belief needs to be challenged because your worth is separate from your output. Your worth is separate from what you deliver in your day-to-day role. 5 p.m. will then become 9 p.m. So the shift isn't time management, it's how you see yourself and what you believe to be true. What are you actually proving by working late? By solving every problem, by being constantly available? And if the answer includes that I'm valuable, or I'm proving that I deserve this role, or that I'm dedicated, that's what's going to keep you stuck. That's what's going to keep you coming back to those old habits and behaviors. So in addition to recognizing the habits and behaviors we want to leave behind, we also need to start practicing the new behaviors, the new ways of doing things for the role that we are now in. If we are letting go of needing to be involved in everything, then we need to really step into and start practicing that I am now somebody who has a team of people that I am developing to be able to handle it without me. Start small. One decision that you can do this week. Start small. You don't need to make big steps with this. Identify one problem that they can solve without your input. Just one task that you don't need to rescue them from. It's going to feel uncomfortable, no doubt about that. You are going to want to step in because that's what you've already done. Your identity will scream that you're being lazy, that you are not being helpful, that you're not being supportive, that you're not doing your job properly. That discomfort is the sign that that identity shift is starting to happen. It's uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar, and it's uncomfortable because it's new. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes, and the more this becomes your new normal and your new way of doing things. And especially once you start to see the success and how this is having a positive impact, that's definitely going to help. Use the AAA time framework to identify where your time is going. You want to be able to see more ascend time tasks, more strategic work. You want to be working in that middle lane because you know that that's sustainable, and you want to be making that pause to break those old habits. If you do not pause, you will go into the automatic old habits, and that's a tough challenge to be able to crack. So pause, prioritize, proceed with purpose. This new leader identity starts to emerge. You are going to notice a number of things happening. And I'm going to share this with you because this will help you to keep that momentum going. When it's so easy to get drawn back into what you've always done, these are the things that are going to help you to keep that momentum going and keep driving forward. This new identity as a leader is going to transform your sense of worth. So you're not measuring your value by the hours that you've worked or the problems that you've solved. Your worth becomes tied to your team's capability, to their confidence, to their independence. When they succeed without you, it's proof that your leadership is working, not proof that you're unnecessary or not needed. So your relationship with being needed changes. You let go of wanting to be indispensable. You recognize that actually being the go-to person at this level creates the bottleneck, and it's some leadership failure, not a badge of honor. You stop training your team to need you, and you start developing their ability to function without you. And be okay with it. Be okay that they just crack on and get it done. Definition of supportive evolves. Being supportive used to mean dropping everything to solve a problem. And now it means asking, okay, what have you tried? What are your options? What would you do if I wasn't here? This is how you develop a team of problem solvers, not a team that is dependent on you. As we mentioned earlier, your core values will show up, but they're going to look different. So making a difference would have used to have meant personally delivering the work. You wanted to see the difference in that delivery. But now it means enabling 5, 10, 20 people to deliver work that you would never have capacity for if you did it on your own. Your impact multiplies because your identity shifted from being the doer to the developer. And your guilt about boundaries will disappear because your worth isn't tied to constant availability. Saying no doesn't feel like failing. It feels like developing, and protecting that strategic time doesn't feel selfish. And going home at 5 doesn't require justification because your identity no longer demands proof through endless doing. Your team becomes genuinely capable. They stop coming to you for every decision because you've developed their capability to make those decisions for themselves. When you're away, the work continues. When you take time off, nothing falls apart. They're confident, self-sufficient, and growing because your leadership identity is creating space for them to grow, for them to evolve. So that means the big week off becomes possible. 0 work, 0 stress, and 0 guilt, because you know that the systems are strong, the team is capable, and your identity no longer requires being needed to feel valuable. So you can disconnect completely, knowing that everything will run smoothly because you've developed leaders, not a team of dependents. One of the clients on the last program actually said that they, and this was during the program, took a full week off, stress-free, guilt-free, and everything was planned and running smoothly, and they returned in control and not panicking. And this is the difference. When your identity evolves, the habits, the behaviours, and the systems follow more naturally because you're no longer fighting against who you feel you need to be, and you're stepping into who you choose to be. I would love to know what's resonated with you in this video today. I would love for you to choose one action to implement this week because we want to take the learning and we want to turn it into action. Remember, keep it small, keep it simple, and keep it specific. And if you do need more support with something like this, then do feel free to pop me a message or head to the website. You can book in a call and we can talk through what that might look like. If you are a leader within an organization and you're looking for support for yourself or perhaps for one of your team, I would love to have a conversation with you to see what would be a good fit and how we can get them that support to make them more efficient, to make them more effective, and to create confident and self-sufficient teams. If you haven't already, I would love for you to hit the subscribe button so then you won't miss out on these weekly videos and the podcast episodes. And if something you have heard today really resonated with you and you know somebody who would benefit from hearing this, do feel free to hit the share button and send on to them. And I'll be back with another video next week.